Today we have Dave Waltemeyer with us. He's an expert in raising Duroc pigs with a rich history in farming, breeding Durocs, and dates back all the way to his teenage years. Dave's connection to Duroc history is deeply personal, influenced by his great uncle Jacob, a renowned Duroc breeder. So we're excited to interview him today and have a few questions to touch on. Thank you for joining us. I'd love for you if you could start by explaining what Heritage Duroc pork is and what makes it so unique compared to other types of pork.
Well, I would compare it to other types of breeds that are out there. And with the Duroc, you're going to get your durability. You're going to get a lot of vigor. They're very heavy boned. Your economic components of feed efficiency and rate of gain. And all that does is that equals some more profitability. And I think that's what makes that Duroc so popular today. And also yesteryear, back in the day, they were always popular that way just because of the economic traits and easy doers.
What are some distinguishing characteristics of Duroc pigs that contribute to the quality of their meat?
Well, the pH levels, I think, stay pretty consistent. Of course, depending on your genetic lines, but I think through the years that's been done a very good job of getting pH levels to where they need to be. And of course, you got your marbling that they're noted for, and that leads to a great flavor and the tenderness of the pork. And Duroc stands above, in my mind, of the rest of the breeds by those different traits.
I'd love to get into a little bit of the history. Can you walk us through the history of Duroc pigs? Where did they originate and how are they involved over time?
Well, basically, there were two different strains, what then was called red hogs.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the strain they were the Jersey Reds, and they were very massive and coarse. I mean, you're talking 900 to 1,000 pound pigs on the Jersey Reds. And they actually descended from a pair of pigs that came from England. Now, there is a little bit of discrepancy there. Some people think they originated from Spain, but I believe England is probably the correct answer. And that was in the year of 1832. And then the Duroc, as named, was the more compact type pig. They didn't get as big and they weren't as coarse. And they were called the Duroc of New York. They originated from northern Africa. And actually, that pig was noted up and down the East Coast because of the slave trade. So they originated from Africa, and pigs were brought over along as the slaves were brought over to the U.S. And so both breeds in 1882, they were combined, and it was called the American Duroc Jersey Record Association. And that was formed they were combined in 82, and then the association was formed in 83. And then in 1891, the National Duroc Jersey Record Association was organized. And so they combined the Jersey Reds with the Durocs in that association. And that's when the pedigrees became prevalent, and the shows and the fairs and stuff like that.
How significant do you think the historical breeding practices are to maintaining the quality of Heritage Duroc pork today?
Well, the breeders back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when Uncle Jake was there, they were very serious at keeping the breed pure and maintaining the characteristics that we see today in those pigs. It wasn't uncommon for a breeder back in the early 1900s just to keep one boar just to mate to one sow, just to get those type of genetics and the characteristics that they're looking for. And I think that kind of based the foundation of what we see today. Now in I believe it was 70s, late 70s or early 80s, some breeders brought over some European Durocs, and that kind of, exactly what word, it watered down the genetics that were used back in the early 1900s and such. But, and as things change, back when Uncle Jake was doing stuff, lard was a big deal. So they were heavier and had more fat on them. Where now it's in a lot of things were geared now today for feed efficiency, rate of gain, and the marbling that we've talked about, and the flavor we talked about. So that's probably come a long ways, but still the main thing is the vigor and the durability that the Duroc has been carried through all these years. It helps make it a good economic pig to use in your program.
I'd love to touch on your personal journey. Dave, you started raising Duroc at a very young age. Can you share more about your journey and how you started with this?
Yeah, I was a freshman in high school, and I took FFA, or Future Farmers in America class, and we were required to have some type of project, and we didn't have any pigs on the farm at that time. And so I talked to Dad about it, and he said sure. And so I had like 310 or $15 in the bank, and he took me to Iowa City. It was about a 100-mile drive. There was 3 breeders that were having bred gilt sales. I bought 2 bred gilts. They cost $150 a piece, so I had like 10 or 15 bucks left over after I paid for them, and it grew from there. Um, I was able to maintain them in high school. I went to the state fair, and I showed in the championship drive, and I was named champion showmanship. And through the years, I had reserve premier sire at the National Barrel Show up in Austin. That's where all the breeds are at, and that was kind of a highlight for me. But through college, I was able to maintain that herd, and then I sold out. In 1975, I took a job with a purebred drug breeder in Hamilton, Missouri, and so I got out of them at that time, and then moved back to Iowa, got back in them, and then unfortunately the farm crisis of the 80s and high interest rates, low prices stuff, then I got completely out of business, but just stayed within the pork industry.
What impact did your uncle Jacob have on your career and passion for raising Duroc?
Well, it must have been kind of through the genetic line, because I never knew Uncle Jake. He was born in the 1880, maybe something like that, and I think he passed away in 48 or 49. And so I never knew him, but Dad had a pretty close relationship with him as being his uncle, and and so maybe that was part of it. And Dad was able to keep all of his old show ribbons and a handful of his trophies, and I got both Duroc history books, and so maybe that was just kind of ingrained in me at that age. And I always had an interest in livestock versus driving a tractor or doing row crops and stuff like that.
Do you have any memorable stories that you could share about your experience in the early days of raising Duroc pork?
Well, maybe just the showing at the state fair and at the National Barrel Show, and be able to, I sold boars, to local people around the town of Melbourne that I was born and raised in. And I don't know, I just got the enjoyment out of raising a good pig, a good quality pig. And it kind of got my interest. I really didn't do a lot of, I think I did one judging deal in FFA, but when I went to college, I was on the judging team, and then it's a 2-year school. In the second year, we won the national championship in in 75. I was high judge in swine. I finished 3rd high in the overall, and then we also had the national champion in the meat evaluation. I was on that team also, and I was 4th high. So I think just being involved in livestock helped lead to that, and then I think that helped me because you get all reviews and stuff like that, and I think that helped me with job applications, stuff like that, and being able to speak in front of people and stuff.
How did you come to work for Coleman All Natural Meats?
Well, I have done everything in the pork production with the exception of logistics and contracts, and I had no interest in either one of those. And so everything else, I've been involved in pork production until I saw this. I saw it as an advertisement. It might have been in Pig Careers or something like that, and it had to do with compliance, and that interested me. It still kept me involved in pork production, but not so much of the walking the barns and working in the barns and that sort of thing. And it can get hard on your body as you grow older.
Yeah.
And so I turned in my application, and I was one of the lucky ones to be able to interview with Dr. Jim Migalski, and I got hired.
That's awesome. A little bit about the future of Heritage Duroc Pork. What challenges do you foresee the Heritage Duroc industry, and how do you think that we can address them?
Well, to me, it's not so much that the Heritage Duroc, I think it's the industry as a whole. The meat and dairy industry is under attack, from the World Economic Forum, environmental groups, and other organizations. And their goal is to eliminate livestock. I mean, it simply is. And I think that's a real threat. And I hope that the people within the industry take it serious. I mean, they're wanting us to eat a plant-based food. They want us to have the insects for our protein, and the list kind of goes on. And at one time, maybe it was labor that was a threat, and disease is always going to be a threat. But as far as a livelihood and being able to maintain the meat industry as we know it, we've got to be very conscious of what these organizations are trying to do to the industry.
Where do you see the demand for Heritage Duroc pork going in the next few years? Are there emerging markets or trends that are particularly exciting to you?
Well, I think one thing that comes to mind, I think Heritage Duroc or Coleman does a very nice job and super job actually of marketing the product. And maybe if any type of expansion within the market itself would maybe come to some type of export market.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing that I could see, and maybe grow that part of Coleman, and I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking out loud a little bit here, but that was something that might be entertained down the road is an export market of some sort.
Just some closing thoughts. Dave, what advice would you give young farmers or enthusiasts who are interested in raising Heritage Duroc?
I think it's important you get aligned with a progressive company, that has an eye for the future. They've got a sound marketing strategy for the meat products that they're selling. It's a company that has to be well grounded and understands the consumer's wants and needs. And I think as I thought about that and wrote that, then Coleman just pops into my head. I mean, they're everything like that. So a person that wants to make this as a career, make sure you get hooked up with a company that has that vision down the road and understands, again, the consumer's wants and needs. That's so important, and be able to get that in front of the consumer, because we're fighting the people that want to eliminate us as an industry. So that's always going to be to the forefront. We always got to be positive with the consumer. This is what we're doing, and this is why we do it. And so it's so important to have that good quality product, and that goes back to using the Heritage Duroc. That's a large part of it.